2,500 years ago, a Greek poet named Heraclitus said, "No man steps into the same river twice." And one might even say no one visits San Francisco twice because it's changing.
Do you think it's changing for the better?
You know, that's like saying he's getting older for the better. It's inevitable.
This is a pretty special place. And not just because of its unique beauty, but because San Francisco has always attracted special people, mavericks and bohemians, and it's always had a rebellious streak. In the 1920s, it even passed its own laws against prohibition. In the 1950s, it was home to the Beat generation of Kerouac, Ginsberg, and Ferlinghetti. In the 1960s, of course, it gave birth to the hippies and flower power. And in the 70s, it was the champion of the gay rights movement. And it's that sort of freedom and spirit of anti-materialism that we think of when we think of San Francisco. But now people are saying that that San Francisco that we know and cherish may be doomed. No, it's not the earthquakes, but it is tearing the city apart. This is an invasion. The IT invasion.
Where do they come from? I don't know.
It's the techies.
They come from another world, bringing a new dimension in terror.
And they're coming from everywhere.
You're endangered, flee!
And it may be too late to stop them.
Can't you see? They're here already! You're next!
Good old San Francisco, the counterculture capital of the world, is in the middle of a pretty drastic makeover. Like many great cities around the world, San Francisco's being forced to reinvent itself. Everywhere you look, you see cranes building luxury high-rise apartments. And in neighborhoods all over town, the shells of the old houses are hiding new, expanded, and retrofitted palaces. These are the homes for a new generation who've been transforming this town into a power city. But as the march of progress pushes forward, the question is, will some be left behind? San Francisco is now the world's leading tech paradise. Thousands of tech firms call this place home. But many of the locals accuse the new generation flocking to the city of being oblivious to the culture they're displacing. San Francisco 2.0 is full of tech bros, hipsters, yoga yuppies, $6 cupcakes, organic juice shops, and freshly minted millionaires who all work for these new silicon startups. And where do all these startup companies come from? Well, many of them come out of incubators. Like nursery greenhouses or mushroom basements, tech incubators are trying to grow startups in buildings all over town.
Incubator is a term for any kind of program or space which accepts startup companies and helps facilitate their growth. We've got about 75 different companies working in this one space, and they apply to us. It's an invitation-only space. So the entire space is a shared workspace. Rather than work in isolation, the teams can pool together resources, make as many serendipitous opportunities possible that we can.
How'd you end up in San Francisco?
Okay. So one of the reasons why I moved here and why people are sort of flocking here, and the way I kind of think about it, it's almost like a digital gold rush. I kept reading company after company being acquired, and at the end of the news article it would say San Francisco, California, San Francisco, California. So after reading about 10 of those, you sit to say, okay, something's going on here, something's happening here, and I gotta get myself there to see it for myself. And I bought a one-way plane ticket out, and the first week I managed to become the first employee at Runway Incubator.
The new media is literally pushing out old media. Yahoo has taken over 3 full floors of the Chronicle building, the town's largest daily newspaper since 1865.
So what's it like to be young and working here in San Francisco?
First of all, there's no old people and kids in San Francisco, especially in the center. That shifts your mind. That means that you're in a young bubble. And this young bubble is a place where everyone is doing something, and everyone is doing something extraordinary. It's like every action I take every day can be improved through an app or through a new service or experience, and everyone in San Francisco is trying to think about that. I sit in a chair, how can I improve that experience? I order a pizza, how can I improve that experience? I order a soda, how I improve that experience?
In the new digital gold rush, the shining lure is workplace perks. The tech companies have engaged in something like a perk war, with each firm having its own array of happy-making enticements to bring the best and the brightest into their fold.
San Francisco, Silicon Valley is really changing work environments throughout the world for the rest to follow.
How come everything in Silicon Valley feels like my 5-year-old's fantasy?
It is, because it is.
Don't you have jobs to do? What are you doing playing with Legos?
We have a games room, a massage room here. Around the corner we have a music room.
We've always had a jam room of some sort. Our first office had drums in the corner, looked kind of like that.
And it's not just food and toys.
You need something for your computer.
Need a new component or software for your computer?
Get your badge.
Just push a button.
There you go.
It's free.
Everything here is free. It's part of the deal, part of the benefits deal. From food to drinks to gyms to everything you see here. And everything's provided to make your work-life balance good and enjoyable.
What do you see when you look around the room?
Just happy people. Love being working here. Just happy people. This is the future. Without a doubt, this is the future. And then some.
San Francisco is going to be the place that will save America and eventually the world, because we would create the next jobs and we would create the next way people are more productive than where they are right now. And San Francisco presently is the richest place in the world, bar none. And we have about 1/4 of the world's construction right now happening in the city.
No way.
What we are seeing here is the early stages of a phenomena that we have seen all the way from the Roman Empire, where we would become the center of the world.
A steady stream of young people with Facebook and Twitter dreams continue to swarm into this center of the world, hoping to get planted in an incubator. And with a little bit of luck, might end up like this guy, a multi-millionaire who developed a startup from scratch.
How did you get rich?
How did I get rich? We sold a social network called Bebo in 2008. We sold it to AOL for $850 million. Didn't fare well at AOL. Bought it back a year ago for $1 million. And now we're redeveloping it here at Monkey Inferno to relaunch it.
How come if I've never heard of your company, there are all these millionaires walking around here that got rich off selling these companies I've never heard of?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in Silicon Valley and I still meet people every day that I've never heard of their company.
So why don't you just sit on a beach somewhere? Why are you still working?
It's so boring. I like projects. I like setting myself a goal and seeing if I can reach that goal. So we started the club, private members club called The Battery in San Francisco, and we opened the club primarily because we thought there's an opportunity and no reason this couldn't create a really interesting kind of social environment for San Francisco.
So with luxuries like invited membership-only clubs that provide exclusive opportunities to socialize and network, the tech set is extending their paradise beyond the walls of the workplace and into the fabric of San Francisco life itself. But why San Francisco? How did all the tech bros end up here? Well, it all started down in Silicon Valley. People were coming from all around the world to work there, but no one really wanted to live there. So the tech companies started chauffeuring their young talent on these luxury buses to and from where they really wanted to live, in San Francisco. After seeing the dark double-decker buses everywhere, it didn't take long for the wise leaders of the great city to wake up and smell the money. So Mayor Ed Lee and his advisors devised a plan to entice the tech companies to relocate to the city. By offering tax breaks to any firm that would move its headquarters into a region around the Tenderloin, a district known for its homeless and destitute, the city lured in the tech giants, creating the second gold rush for San Francisco and opening the Golden Gate for the techies to build their playground.
We've got 1,979 tech companies. I mean, we went from 9.5% unemployment rate to 5.2% in less than 2 years. So that's 42,500 new jobs.
One of the chief architects of the so-called Twitter tax break, as it came to be known, was billionaire investor Ron Conway. Known as the tech godfather, his investments almost single-handedly turned companies like Google and Facebook into corporate giants.
Not me single-handedly, not at all.
But you're the money guy. You're the guy that gets all these startups. You're starting up. You're the guy who's starting up all the startups.
Well, I'm funding a few of them, some of the ones that got big. Twitter and Square are huge companies. Pinterest is going to be a huge, huge company.
But you're the mastermind behind this. You're the consigliere that got the mayor to roll out the red carpet for the tech companies.
Well, the mayor, I didn't have to convince the mayor of anything. Ed Lee has a lot of common sense. It's Ed Lee who did this. It's not Ron Conway.
San Francisco is booming. I barely recognize my hometown
That's
now.
called progress. That's called progress. And when you bring in these tech companies who innovate, the byproduct is the entire community is going to make progress. Now, we do create problems. San Francisco is only 6 square miles, and that's why we have an affordability, housing affordability issue that we have to deal with, but we are dealing with it.
So there's trouble in paradise. They call it a housing affordability crisis, which is the politically correct way of saying that you have so many well-paid techies moving into this small little peninsula that if you don't have a billionaire venture capitalist backing you, you can't afford to live here.
The price of this property, if I hadn't touched it, has gone up more than 50% in 3 years. So if I had not touched it, I could turn around today and sell it for probably $1,650, $1,700. With this completed, this remodel done, it's arguably worth $2,600. It could even be worth $3,000. So this house should rent when it's finally completed, and it'll only be about 1,400 square feet, but it'll rent for about $10,000 a month. Big, huge television recessed in the wall here. Subwoofer on the floor. Speakers in the ceiling. Electronic shades for the windows. Hit a button. This is the boom cycle of this city, which is a city that has a history of booms and then lulls. Not really busts, but booms and lulls. And so we've got a boom. We've got a bona fide boom. It's the internet 2.0 or 3.0 or social networking, whatever you want to call it. But it's super exciting.
And now that the traditionally desirable neighborhoods are full, or unaffordable, the well-heeled hipsters are taking over the formerly less desirable areas. The infusion of new money is pushing the lower-income residents out.
I live in the Hunters Point area. I'm being evicted out of my home that I've been in for 27 years. I've grown up in this home. Hunters Point is not much of a good area, but it's home to everybody that's been there for so long. And all these companies coming in and taking over our area, it's a little difficult because we have nowhere to go. Where do we go? Where do we stand as a people in our own neighborhood where we're getting pushed out of because of these large billion-dollar tech companies?
As this drama plays out, a new kind of segregation between rich and poor is emerging.
This is where they're taking all the projects down and building new apartment buildings for other people. And basically, this is basically the before. They haven't torn it down yet, but they're getting ready to. And this is the after now, which is we look like we're in Beverly Hills somewhere now. Like, it's crazy. They're moving all the, the rich white people in. And it's taking everybody out of their homes. And I'm pretty sure they're not going to make it available for people like us to live over here. So it's kind of like throwing it in our face. Kind of like, we're building this building here and you can't stay here because you can't afford it. All in our face.
Look, there's Candlestick Park. Isn't that going away too?
Yeah, I don't know how long it's going to be there for. They're planning on tearing it down right now because the Niners have moved Santa Clara into the Tech Valley. So now since the tech companies came in and moved it out and moved it over there by where they wanted to get it to be at, you know, it's for them now. Like their Niners is theirs now. It's not even ours anymore. And when we're gonna miss everything about the stadium, they're taking something from us that's very important.
I don't think that the tech companies stole the 49ers. I think that the 49ers went where the money is.
They did. Indeed they did. All of it is about money. All of it. That's all it is. They don't care about nobody else. They don't. They took our history from us.
Of course, not all history is worth saving. This decaying steel yard in the district called Dogpatch is an eyesore, and it's being torn down and replaced by a development project that does have some affordable housing. But this is fast becoming a neighborhood those new lower and middle income residents will not be able to afford. To cater to all the new money moving in, premium cocktail bars, artisan foodie restaurants, and upscale boutiques are popping up and pricing the locals out of their own community.
You know, a city is a fragile thing. It's a sort of a fragile alliance, a fragile pact that people make with each other to live together. People from all different walks of life. And that's what makes a great city. If the current trends continue, where the wealth gap is exploding at a much quicker rate than any other city in America, then the artists and the writers, the musicians, the people who have made this city the kind of attractive magnet that it is, that's all going to go away. San Francisco will become a bland, monotonous, tech-oriented city.
This sweeping away of diversity is happening all over town, but can be felt most acutely in the Mission District, where the tech invasion is a brooding immigrant culture that's been here for decades.
The heart and soul of San Francisco is being actually ripped out of the city. You have teachers, you have policemen, you have firemen, you have janitors. The working class of San Francisco is being pushed out.
Landlords are really greedy. You know, they want more money. They want to cash in on this boom of technology and all the money that's coming in. There's a place on Valencia Street that charges $56 for a hamburger.
So who buys a $56 burger?
It's not us. It's all the techies that come here. So most of this whole block, families were living there, families were living there, families. Right now, you would have this block filled with children playing out in the street. There ain't no children right now playing. You know, if you're gonna live here, you gotta be part of this community. Most of the people who moved in, they don't say hello, they don't talk to you. And I talk to all of them. You know, I make them say hello in the morning. I say good morning, or I say buenos dias, you know, just to kind of break that ice. And then the other thing is our murals. And we have some beautiful murals here in the neighborhood. Some of these businesses that have moved here have either painted over or removed some of our murals. A lot of the murals are cause related. People think they're just murals, but if you look at, for example, this mural, you have Cesar Chavez on there, you know, you have Martin Luther King, people who have contributed to the betterment of the human race.
San Francisco's murals have always reflected the struggles in the community, and the pain they feel today is visible on the city's walls.
There's my favorite one right here. You do know we were also almost evicted, right? You know, we fought it. Well, one day my mom, you know, she doesn't know English well, so she like showed me this letter. And, you know, I was reading through it. I didn't understand it, but from the gist that I picked out of it is that, hey, you know, 1 year from now, from today, you know, pack your things and go. Here's a nice check, you know, for you to like, you know, find a new place somewhere.
So how much were you offered to find a new place?
Oh, yeah, for me like less than $2,000, which doesn't cover even like moving expenses. You know, it's barely enough to like even find a place in San Francisco or like even like in the areas around it. It was garbage money, right?
So you were offered $2,000 to leave your home?
Yeah, he kind of like gift wrapped it too, like he was doing me a favor, you know? That's pretty much how these businessmen see it, It's like, I didn't cause a problem, but I can, somehow profit from it. Not how I can help. Not how I can help the situation, but how can I benefit myself from it? People came here in droves, just, expressing their own ideas, for free. Crazy, right? Sharing your art, sharing your expression for no money, just for the love of it. The city's being taken over by the one thing I always thought the city hated, and that is just money. And that's what these guys are trying to do. They're trying to take that away. They're trying to say, okay, how can we make money, period? I was always fascinated by, the business angle of San Francisco and the art angle of San Francisco and how they always kind of clash. It's kind of like, it's kind of like a paradox, right? But they fit so well, like yin and yang. It's beautiful. But now it's I guess more unbalanced. It's become probably one of the most expensive cities in the whole freaking world. City where it just revolved around arts and just in the beauty of imperfection is being lost to money.
The gap between the rich and the poor is growing at a very unprecedented rate, not necessarily because the poor are getting poorer, but because the rich are getting richer. And we are in an eviction epidemic right now. These are the 3 types of no-fault evictions that are used to displace tenants for no fault of their own.
What is an Ellis Act eviction?
An Ellis Act eviction is when a landlord decides to exit the rental market. And what they do is they speculate on a building, buy it. Often within the first year of ownership, they give the tenants, who are often rent-controlled tenants, Ellis Act notices. And that means that they have to vacate. It's very hard to fight an Ellis Act eviction. It's unfortunately legal. It's a state law that supersedes any city law or ordinance. Ellis Act evictions are up 175% over the last year. No-fault evictions in general are up 115% over the last year alone. These huge corporations that are tech corporations are basically just selling San Francisco to their employees as an added benefit or perk. So, you can work in Mountain View or Palo Alto and get to live in this cool, hip city. And of course, landlords are taking advantage of the money that tech is bringing into the city to evict longtime residents for no fault of their own to create housing that people much more affluent can afford. And we're seeing this happen again and again. These people who are very vulnerable, who are very reliant on their neighbors and communities that they've built throughout their lifetime being forced out and basically just put into the street.
I, as a former mayor of San Francisco, could not afford to live in my house that I bought in 1972. It's too expensive if I were to try to buy it today. And so it is with every house here. Look at the young people, look at the coffee shops, look at all, it's changed. And with it, the nature of the population, because we aren't building any alternatives for people who have traditionally had an opportunity to live in what was affordable housing. And we want to keep a place in the city for the people who can't afford $4,200 for a 2-bedroom place or $5 million condominiums.
The space invaders of San Francisco 2.0 are not only usurping housing, but in their quest to put up mega-story tech towers, developers are taking over San Francisco institutions, like the Flower Mart. The Flower Mart has been a cornerstone of the flower industry, supplying the whole of the West Coast for over a century.
This is the San Francisco Flower Mart. It is one of 5 in the country. It's the 2nd largest in the country. It's been here, the origins, for over 100 years, and in this particular city block, which it encompasses, for 56 years. There is no other place like this in all of San Francisco, and it's important that it be here because it's part of the transportation hub that's necessary for the flowers to come here for the wholesalers, the retailers, and all of these small businesses. The developers want to demolish all of this, create high-rise office parks.
Who do you think is responsible for the changes taking place here?
I don't think it's the tech companies that are doing it. I think it's the developers that are reaching out to the tech companies that see an opportunity here. They get with the tech companies, and the tech companies go, yeah, this would be a great location.
Developers see an opportunity here to make billions of dollars at the expense of the heart and soul of this city.
the developers will build their 1.5 million square foot tech campus. The flower vendors will have to relocate for a few years during the construction, and if they survive, they can move into the ground floor of this new high-rise. So much for flower power, but at least they have a chance to remain in business. In the battle for the heart and soul of San Francisco, other small businesses haven't been so lucky.
The vice president and leasing agent for this building came down here and told me my rent was going to triple. When we first started working out, when I first started working down here in 1987, 1988, there were literally tumbleweeds in this part of town. There was nothing down here. You couldn't get a cup of coffee. We were a primary source of income for quite a few artists, including Randy right there, who's picking his artwork up now, and at this point there's no place else to sell it. The people getting hurt are artists, small business people, people who can't program or write code. You know, San Francisco is rapidly becoming a tech town and a tourist town. There's nothing in between. There aren't jobs for the rest of the people who don't work in either of those two industries. Tech has money. Tech pushes people around. And when they say we want buildings or we want this, they get what they want.
It's not about saying, oh, these wealthy young white guys are coming in and they are the problem. The problem is capitalism and that we live in a market-driven economy. Now, there's a whole nother element to the techies that has to be thrown into this, which is the cultural one, which is people complaining they're not real San Franciscans. They don't understand. This is a town of renegades and mavericks. You know, the techies have gotten beaten up a lot because they're not giving back to the community.
Do you think the tech companies are giving back enough to the city?
No, the tech companies aren't even coming close to giving back enough. And I think they're very vulnerable to attacks. And they need to wake up to that reality. It's not good enough to say we create jobs and generate revenue, though they create jobs and generate revenue. They have to find a way to be responsible for the world outside their doors.
I am very concerned with what happens to all of these young geniuses who are part of all these startups. And obviously, more than 90% of the startups never go anywhere. At some point, the angel investors and all the people who provided the startup money will be gone. And all these young people, all of whom are talented, gifted, and what have you, will be at a loss, but they'll be in our city. Will they become the next group of people we really have to look out for? I am really concerned about that.
Why should anyone care about what's happening in San Francisco?
San Francisco is a microcosm for what is happening not only in the United States, but all over the world. San Francisco is London. It is Vancouver. It is Manhattan. It is places that are increasingly desirable to live in, that are becoming gated communities. I think that ultimately there is a very fundamental question that we all have to face. We have a tradition of helping one another, but as we separate by income and by place, as we segregate geographically according to our pocketbooks and wallets, as we lose contact across classes with each other, the question is, can we maintain a sense of being one people? I'm worried about a city that is becoming uniformly wealthy and out of reach and out of touch.
And that is the anomalous character of this new internet culture. And it is creating winners and losers and exacerbating the gap between the rich and the poor and the middle class. And that is a big political problem, and it's not going to be solved just in San Francisco or even primarily in San Francisco. It's going to challenge the country to make the kind of rules that will help cushion the untoward side effects and create a more egalitarian society.
So now the question is, what's the government's role in all of this? This is turning into a conversation that goes deep into the nature of capitalism. Tech companies say they don't have to play by the government's rules because they're not a part of any industry. They're only creating apps that bring people together and help them share. In fact, they call it the sharing economy, which kind of sounds like a bohemian 60s hippie concept.
Well, the expression the sharing economy sounds wonderful. I mean, who doesn't want to share? I mean, I think it's delightful to conceive of people sharing their cars and their homes and everything else. But look more closely. You're taking more and more real estate off the rental market. That means you've got fewer and fewer places for middle-class and working-class people to rent or potentially to buy. And that means unless you have a lot of new housing being created, and you don't have that in San Francisco, Airbnb is actually making it harder rather than easier for the middle class and the poor.
Airbnb and the other big names in the sharing economy are multi-billion-dollar corporations that have small businesses crying foul.
Obviously, I'm not a big fan of Airbnb. I am biased as I do help run a hotel. They get a lot of tax breaks that we don't get. They don't have to function as a normal hotel. They don't pay the proper taxes that they have to, and that hurts our business. If Airbnb wants to act like it's a proper business, then one of the things they should do is pay their taxes and feed into the community, feed into San Francisco. So I'm trying to run a hotel, and they're stealing money out of my pocket. No one's saying they shouldn't be able to rent it out, right? As long as they abide by the same legal codes that we have to, and the same building inspections that we have to, and the same taxes that we have to.
Okay, Sean, you're the smartest techie I know. So just explain it to me. How come we can't get the tech companies to play by the rules?
Well, you can, but we hardly have any regulations, and we can effectively at the moment do as we wish. So we live in a world where we actively kind of move away from things that are regulated, that have government influence. And in many ways, when we can't get the systems to work, we create Uber, we create Airbnb, because, to hell with the taxi union, to hell with the hotel lobby, we'll just make our own system, and it's on an iPhone, and so, we can run faster than you, so we don't need to deal with your regulatory structures. So it's a world where we make products that sometimes circumvent regulation, either by just being so far ahead or by just, changing the rules of the game.
Though the gears of government do move slowly, the San Francisco Board of Supervisors did take action and called a hearing to discuss legislation that would regulate home sharing. And what happened here will have profound implications on the way America does business.
Airbnb is headquartered here, and they are fighting like heck to make sure that San Francisco doesn't regulate them, so they can send a message to Seattle and Los Angeles and New York and Chicago that if they can do it in San Francisco, they can do it anywhere.
It's a legislative battle that pits neighbor against neighbor. Those who can no longer afford to live in their homes without sharing them.
Home sharing enables my wife and myself and so many like us to afford our homes in today's economy and not have to leave this city.
And those who are concerned about home sharing's impact on affordable housing.
Look at the numbers. It's pretty horrible. 5,000 units a day available online.
These hearings produced a new law that requires Airbnb to begin to pay hotel taxes. But housing activists are pushing for even tougher legislation to go on the ballot. It'll be up to the voters to decide if the sharing economy needs more regulation. Now the concerns are shifting to the other players in the sharing economy, like the unregulated car services.
We love technology, so it was like, if anyone else came along and said, I'm going to create a new taxi service, the union would have been like, you can't do that, they're not allowed, there's all sorts. You should probably have regulation. What is it, you want drivers that have never been tested and you don't want assurance, and no, you can't. That's not a good idea. But as soon as you hold up, it's on an iPhone. Everyone's like, what is on an iPhone? That's amazing. We should absolutely have this. That's awesome. What else can you do on an iPhone? This stuff is amazing. And so there's this kind of, you wrap yourself in the cloak of technology and you can get away with so much stuff.
What happens to widening inequality? What happens to job security? I mean, everybody who becomes more of a contingent worker, more of a precarious worker, whether you're an Uber driver or you are an Airbnb proprietor, your source of income is that less certain. A freelance economy can be a very cruel economy. It can be a form of social Darwinism. you know, survival of the fittest.
A visit to the Tenderloin District reveals the new Darwinian reality. As innovation eliminates jobs, it's pushing older, college-educated workers out of the workforce and into the food lines and soup kitchens. Like Alan here, who used to work at a securities firm.
How'd you go from working in a securities firm to being homeless?
Well, it was a recession. No one was hiring. I went through my unemployment benefits, then I cashed out my 401k, and then I started working temp jobs.
I know other people that are in my position that are college educated, that have lost everything.
In this land of young entrepreneurs, you have to adapt or die. And Alan is a dinosaur.
So this is where I live. This is what it's like during the day. So I have to leave a light on all the time. The only time I will be in this room all day is if it's raining heavily outside. I leave after breakfast and don't come back till sundown. So basically, the only thing I do in here is sleep or read at night or watch TV. That's it.
Are you looking for work?
On Monster, LinkedIn, any other website, I have never gotten a response for work. Never hear a word. I'm 61. I've got 2 college degrees. I've got about 30 years experience working in the corporate world, and nobody wants somebody like me. I'm on the tail end of my work life. I'm about to retire, so nobody wants to hire somebody like me. I don't live in your world anymore. Things are completely different. What you take for granted doesn't exist in my world anymore. I mean, for over 20 years, I was able to have a 1-bedroom apartment in San Francisco by myself in a nice area. And now I'm living in a place like that, in an SRO, in one of the worst parts of town. I think we're rapidly becoming something like Venezuela, where there's a very small, ultra-rich class, and everybody else is poor, and the middle class is shrinking. I think the American dream is a load of crap. There is no American dream. It's a nightmare for most people.
Now, there have always been homeless in San Francisco. We can't blame the techies for that. They're the obvious scapegoat in a much more complicated conversation about affordable housing and gentrification. Still, as innovation moves in, with it comes a new generation of homeless. Those who have been pushed out of San Francisco 2.0. This is the dark side. What is the price of change? And what will the growing divide between rich and poor do to the fabric of America? As income inequality becomes something of a national epidemic, we need to find solutions that will keep our country together. And if any city can solve these problems, I'm hoping that this progressive town will lead the way and not leave its heart and soul behind.